Hello everyone! So our character can pull out a weapon and aim it, but what good is that without actually being able to pull the trigger? So let's set up our firing mechanism. So I'm going to go into my player blueprint and let's do some tidying real quick. So this is our equip weapon function. I'm going to box select and with C create a comment box, and this is equip stow weapon. This will just help later on when we get a bunch of these. We'll be able to go and be like, oh, okay, that's not the one I need, that's not the one I need, and then find it easier. So this is aiming. And then over next to the aiming, we'll do a left mouse button event. And for now, we'll go back and restrict it with ammo counts later on. We're just going to get firing set up and then so basically build the feature and then put in the limitations. So when we press the left mouse button, we want to see if we have a weapon equipped. So we're going to check to see if we are armed, because if we're not, we don't want to do anything. So are we armed? If yes, then we're going to do our trace. We're going to add another bool here and say B can fire, because we're going to, the way we set it up to be able to do the looping fire is we'll disable their ability to fire depending on the fire rate of the weapon. So if they are armed and can fire, this way we can check those two booleans at once. So if they are armed and they can fire, then we will tell them that, okay, you're going to fire, so we're going to make it to where you can't fire for a little bit. Then we will do a trace to see what we're going to hit. So over in the functions, we'll create one. This will be our fire trace. And we're going to do a sphere trace by channel. You might think, why not just do a line trace? But those have just kind of unreliable. This gives a little bit more reliable of a hit. We'll just set the radius real small, so it'll basically just be like a little tube, because a bullet would be kind of like a tube flying through the air anyway. So I'm going to set this to about like 5. Now we want our start to always be the same point. The end might be different depending on whether or not we're aiming down the sights or not. So for our start point, let's get our weapon reference, and we will get its scene component. Wait, let's take a look at our... Oh, the base weapon, we never set that up. Alright, so in our base weapon, we will need a scene component. So we will just add a scene. And this will be the fire from scene component. This will be where our particle emitter spawns and where our line trace starts. So you want to do it in the base weapon so that every weapon has access to it. Then in each weapon we'll be able to go and position it where we want it. So I'll just position it. Whoa, what is it? So let's position it where we wanted. And I'm just gonna not like that, with snapping enabled, then I'll rotate it. Because for some reason it always, when you put it in, it's aimed that way. Usually. Sometimes it's not. We'll find out. So with that set up, we will go to our weapon reference and get our fire from. And this is where it's going to start. So we will get its world location. Now, regardless of where it ends, we are going to be adding it from this position. So from here, we're going to add a set amount. So if, let's do the aiming down the sights mechanism first. So if we're aiming, then we will get our follow camera and get its forward vector, because the direction that the camera's aiming is where, Then we'll multiply its forward vector, right click, and we'll convert that to a float. Then we can get our weapon reference, get the weapon info, break that open and get its range. So highlighting this, we can also hide unconnected pins. This way each weapon will have its own fire range, and we don't have to worry. So this will always be into the end, but we can do right here a select node. So depending on a certain variable, we are going to either be firing down our camera sights or just directly in front of wherever the character is facing. And that variable is going to be if we are currently aiming. Oop, no. If we are aiming, then we are trying to go based on where the camera is aimed. So we'll say true here. If we are not aiming, then we just want to get our actor's forward vector, basically the direction our character is currently facing, and then essentially do this all again. So we'll just take this, Control C, Control V, right click, convert to float, and then we'll just plug this in also. So we'll actually move this up. And this can be our false. Let's set our draw debug type to for duration, and we'll go ahead and go check this out to make sure it's functioning the way we want. I'm going to disconnect this for now and just set my fire trace up. Make sure our can fire is, actually we'll set that up on our weapon equipped. So if we're armed, can fire becomes true, and if we're not, can fire becomes false. That'd be the easier way of handling it. So we'll save that. Let's jump in. Clicking does nothing. Alright. Alright, cool. So that's working as we would want it to. Now let's go in and refine it a little bit. So, yeah, we'll get rid of this, put the can fire back to false. And we're going to make it to where it has a kind of auto fire. So if you hold the button down, they continue firing. So we'll hit another boolean called B fire held. And we will set that to true right here. And on released, we will set it back to false. Now on fire held, after that, we'll do our fire trace. We'll set up our animations and stuff to happen inside of our fire event so that we don't clutter up out here. Because really, it's only things that would happen in there anyway. So after the fire trace, we will do a delay. The delay will come from our weapon. We'll get its weapon info again. And we're going to break that open to get our fire rate variable, because this is how fast you can fire between shots. Then after that, we'll do a branch to see if fire is held. Oh, actually, after that, before we do that branch, right after the delay, we need to set that can fire back to true. So if you just grab it and drop it right on one of these, it'll automatically hook it like that. So we'll set can fire back to true. Then we want to check to see if our fire button is still being held down. And if it is, then we'll loop back through. We'll rearrange these a little bit. So true, can fire, fire trace. Alright, the reason for that is because if we set that to be set true in the loop, then it'll just keep firing even if we let go. So if fire is true, then we will basically loop back like this. I don't like looping like that. It kind of looks ugly. I usually just add a new custom event, call it continue firing, and I'll just drop that right there, oopsie daisies, and then plug it in. then we can call it right here. Continue firing. With that, we'll just hide unconnected pins and jump in. Left click does nothing. And now he's firing. I'm holding it down. Cool. Now if we change the weapon to the pistol, let's say, it should be noticeably different, because I'm pretty sure that one had a pretty different... Yeah, so it's the fire rate's changing depending on what weapon we have equipped currently. So now we can go into our weapon info and let's see, do we have our sound effects? No. So we need to add to our weapon info. So we'll go into that. We're going to add. This will be fire sound. Sound cue object reference. And we'll save that. Now you may have noticed the BP player, the base weapon, all that now has an asterisk, and if we click save all, there's two things popped up right there. Generally, when working with info structures, what you'll want to do before you make any alterations to it, save everything. Then make your alterations to your info struct and save it alone. Then instead of clicking save all, and this will feel counterintuitive for a long time, but when working with weapon structs or item structs, or especially data tables later on, once you get too complicated into them, if you add to the structure, it can break everything. Like these, if you save everything, it's saving an uncompiled, dirty version of it, essentially. See how they all come up? Now we could just compile because we're not actually using those right now, but what you do in order to avoid that is close the whole thing. Don't save. I know. Bear with me. Double click and open our Unreal Engine back up. Ignore my background. Wait for it to load back up. Which one? Oh, reload our thing. Sit awkwardly. That's my specialty. And then we're back in it. And we won't have any issues. We can open this back up and you'll see we still have our fire sound and our animation and all that. But if we open up our base weapon, it no longer has that unsaved or dirty state, and neither does our player blueprint. So whenever you are, but our fire function is still perfectly the same as it should have been. And now we can even access that fire sound. It registers as an unconnected pin, but we'll just click that again. So whenever you're working with info structs, it's very important that you do that, because I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to go back and adjust like an inventory data table. And I think I did this in the RPG series from years ago. So I apologize for that, but it is, you will break them completely, and it's a pain in the backside to go back and fix it. Tangent aside, let's get back to what we're doing. So now we want to be able to set up the actual fire animation. We'll go into our fire trace, because we're only doing this when we're firing our weapon, just like we're only playing the animation when we're firing a weapon. So we can grab all this, move it down. Gonna need to get that weapon info. I'm just gonna copy it so I don't have to drag everything up like that. And we need our fire animation. So we will do a play montage, play anim montage. Now we only have This one, it doesn't have all those pins at the end, but it's okay. We don't really need them. We're going to set that our animation to play our animontage. The mesh is the target. The mesh is the target. The mesh is not the target. The target is the character. We'll see how this works. Maybe we'll readjust it. And we'll just plug this in for right now. Let's make sure that works before I've maybe done something wrong. This one has no fire animation. Let's go back to our rifle. Gonna open up my rifle just to make sure it has no fire animation. Let's go set up that fire animation. So it is in the anim starter pack. No. It's in our character data because we've retargeted those animations. So we need our fire. We'll do anim montage of the hip fire, mt underscore player, actually mt underscore rifle hip fire. And then one more for the iron sights, create anim montage mt underscore rifle iron fire. Sounds like a dope warrior name, Iron Fire. So for the rifle for now, I'm going to check it just with the iron sights fire animation. And we'll set its blend time to like 0.1, that way, because it's a very short animation, quick. 0.25 would be past the end, I think. Yeah. So, you may have noticed that we are probably going to need to adjust our weapon info again in order to add a second fire animation slot for hip fire versus iron sights, but for now, we'll just jump in and test it to make sure it's... Now you notice, this is what I was talking about, we're going to have to come back and fix because it'll do that. I figured out what the problem is there. But the animation is playing, so that's what matters. So let's go ahead and set that weapon info struct. What we'll do is we can just, I think, duplicate. Can we duplicate? We can't duplicate, but we can add. We'll just add another one. This will be our hip fire animation, and it will be an anim montage. Don't forget to have saved everything before you add to this. Then we'll save it alone and see how these asterisks pop up. We don't want to save everything, so don't do that. We'll close it. Don't save. And I know this is kind of time consuming to show this, but I just kind of want to reinforce that this is the best way of not breaking your structures, data tables, and all that. It gets a little time consuming, which is why the planning portion of things is very important, but planning is my weakness. Something I should work on, probably. So you would probably, as you're playtesting stuff, just keep a notepad next to you and write down things that need to be added. Then at the end, when you're ready to, then you can add them. Let's go, where's our weapon data? Rifle. Now we got our hip fire animation and our fire sound. So fire animation is iron sights, and this is our hip fire. And then inside our player blueprint, we can move this back. Then we'll do a select on the anim montage to see if our character is currently aiming. If they are aiming, they play the iron sights. If they are not, they play the hip fire. Helps if we establish. We did establish. What is happening? Oh, it's blending. Okay, gotta adjust those blend times. So yeah, there's our firing setup so far. We can save everything now. So there are a few things we are going to need to add to our weapon struct. What we might actually do instead, let's just take a look. Did we add impact effects? No. But another way you can add things to the base weapon, if you don't want to add it to the weapon struct and then have to close and reopen, I'm just going to add, let's see, impact effects here. Did I add the firing effects? Nope. So we'll do that here too. So this will be a particle system. Object reference. And I'm going to compile that just to make sure I have access to all the ones I need, because there's a few different kind of particle systems in there. It's Cascade, Niagara, and etc. But the ones I'm using is just the basic particles in here. So we'll duplicate that. And this will be the fire effects. And now we will still have access to this in every weapon, and we can still pull it from the weapon reference. It just won't be through this. So we will see fire effects and impact effects. So we'll back this up, and we're going to spawn emitter. Is there a play emitter? No. Spawn emitter at location. We'll plug this in here, plug this in here. Now the spawn location and rotation is going to be our fire from where we're spawning our bullets. So let's get our fire from get world transform, and then we can split that, move this up, plug this to the location and the rotation. The scale should be fine. This is our firing effects, so we'll plug that in here. We'll come back and kind of rearrange everything to make it prettier, but for right now this is working. Debugging is ugly, and then refining is prettying. At least the way I look at it. So that's our fire effects. We spawn the emitter, getting it from our weapon, play our animation, do our fire trace. We'll take this and this, we'll actually delete that, copy our weapon reference, sphere trace. So our sphere trace goes out, and if it hits something, we need to break the hit result. We'll add a branch, and then this connects to see if we hit something, and then if we did, we want to see if the hit actor is valid, because we don't want to do anything. We don't want to register any damage on an invalid actor because it'll throw an error. So if it is valid, then we want to spawn emitter at location. The location will be the location of the hit. The rotation, we will get the impact point, or is it the impact normal? Normal of the hit in world space for the object that was swept. I think it's the normal. It's one of these. You just plug that into the rotation. It'll automatically change it to a rotation from X vector. What it does is it calculates the angle of the face that you hit, and it'll actually rotate to point out. So if it's not this one, we'll come back and adjust it, but I'm pretty sure it's that one. Now we will put our weapon reference and get our impact effects and plug that in there. And then adding the hit actor will also apply damage. And the damage will also come from son of a gun. our weapon. We'll just call it damage and put it right here, and it'll be a float. Now I don't have to keep closing and opening on it. You can put these in your weapon info, and you just gotta, you know, close it down, open it up. So I'll copy this and bring it down and get the damage function that we set up. So that there. Move this up. Back. That looks kind of cool. Q. Babayama. A little bit prettier. So let's just make sure that's all working. We can set off this debug type for now. Then we'll go in, pull out the rifle. That's not going to do anything because I didn't actually set up the impact effects. Damage, we'll say 5. Impact effects. So this is what's going to happen when it hits. And I'm going to say small metal. Now the fire effects is the assault rifle muzzle flash. Now, alright, so the firing is working, the animation's a little wonky. Let's fix that real quick. We'll go into our anim pieces, and in the animation blueprint, figured out where this is supposed to go. So if you don't have this here, you can go get it from your aimed function. You're going to want to disconnect it from in here anyway. So we'll take this all the way over. Can delete that and then move this back. Compile. Now where we want that is in the anim graph. It is here. Unless it's going to make me look like a liar again, but I'm pretty sure this is where I had it on the other one. So we'll hook it here on the bottom side of this, right where we're going into the root, or the, you know, the so yeah, it's still doing its look up, look down. Oh, but he's doing it at all times? He didn't do that in the other one. Yeah. Either way, that must not be the one. Bear with me. Bear with me. It's not this one. Then it's... Bear with me. I apologize. Is it this one? Game development's kind of finicky sometimes, so every once in a while it's like, it works, but it'll work one time, and then the next time you try it's like, oh no, we're not going to let you do it the same way you did last time. That would be too simple. Maybe it was after the slot. So base, default, blend. Let's try that. Now he's looking up and down when he's not supposed to, though. But he is aiming up and down when he fires. That's awkward. Let's check the other one real quick. Shooter. I don't understand. Man. things will work perfect when I'm doing it by myself, and then that should be working fine. Everything else is working fine. Maybe it was that one? Ah, let's take a look. We'll look at it together, because I'm terrible at editing. That like triples the size of the upload. It takes forever. Plus it ruins into quality for some reason. So, plus this will kind of show you maybe some oh my gosh. Okay, I'm a dope. We gotta do a blend. That makes sense. That makes sense. So this and this goes. So the base is, let me take a look one more time. So the base is just that. And then the blend is on this. Alright. So you are fine. This is where we do our blend. So we'll blend it by bool. And if we are not aiming, then we're just going to do our regular default slot stuff. And if we are aiming, that's when we use the local to component, etc., etc., and it'll blend with our fire montages. Make sure we hook in that aiming variable. Now, looking up does nothing to make him look at the sky. Can fire, montage plays fine. Can aim up and down, and it still keeps it with the montage. Okay. Sorry for the little aside there, but yeah, so there we go. We'll do one more thing just to set it real quick to see, and it is going to be our item data, weapon data. Let's check our shotgun. We'll set it up real quick. So we need to set up our fire animation for the shotgun. Shotgun fire hip. Let's see. Create montage. Empty shotgun hip fire. Create a montage. Empty shotgun iron fire. And then in our shotgun fire animation is the iron sights. Hip fire is our hip fire. Its impact effects, since it's a shotgun, it'll say metal large, and its fire effects, I think there's a shotgun one specifically, shotgun muzzle flash. Damage 15. Doesn't apply at this point, but yeah. Alright, let's save real quick. Jump in. Ugh. Forgot to change his weapon. Let's change it to shotgun. And now the animation's different. Forgot to reposition that scene component, so we'll have to go in here. For each one of your fire from, you'll need to reposition this. And it looked like it was firing sideways. Was it just me? It is firing sideways. Go back to our base weapon and just change it. rotate it 90 degrees because I think we rotated it in the rifle. So we'll rotate it back. That way in the base weapon, they'll all be set up. Save everything. Jump in. Lots of running around on this one, I apologize. I try to make these as quick and streamlined as I can for y'all. Yeah. So the animation's playing, the firing effects and everything. We can aim it up and down now. And hip fire. Alright. In the next one, we'll start setting up our ability to swap between weapons. So I will see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.